In 2021, there was an antitrust lawsuit filed against Google. It's probably appropriate to check in on this, given that there's some stuff that's been happening. I think according to what you were telling me, Lucas, we're in the remedy phase. I think we need a full update on what's going on here. I honestly was not really paying attention to this that well, but thanks for bringing it to my attention.
Isn't it weird? It's like we get all of our news for Google and nobody knows that this is going on. Actually, I think
it doesn't help that it sat there for so long. I mean, it like kind of didn't get actioned on right away when it first got filed, right? It kind of languished for a bit.
I think languish is a great word for it. And, part of it has to do with how large of a company Google is and how much impact this is going to have on the internet. I think there could have been other things that were going on, like this case was filed in 2021, and a very large and also complex case to deal with. But given the collusion, I'll use the word collusion, between the Biden administration and censorship with regards to search and regards to their products, what's going on in YouTube, what's going on in Facebook and Meta's other projects, because Meta is also implicated in this antitrust case that was filed against Google. So it's been interesting to me that.
So does that mean it's not just antitrust, but collusion? I mean, is collusion when two companies are coordinating on stuff?
I mean, that in some ways is one of the common practices in when you get a monopoly and you're an outsized player, then you also start making deals with the other outsized players. Think about the price fixing between Archer Daniels Midland and some of the large agricultural companies that we saw in the early 2000s. Big case against that. We'll get into what happened. I want to sort of lay out a little bit of the history of this too first. So Google, comes around 2003, 2004. We think of it as an advancement in the search engine, but yeah, I think in reality, it was more so an advance in how ads were being sold to us online. And think back to Web 1.0, we had all of these banner ads that were in our face.
Yeah, this was like the big sea change for Google. Like before, it was always banner ads, but then they started doing the targeted text stuff that was just associated with the search results.
Yes, and think also of the word that you just used with regards to targeting, because this is when we start to talk about big data, and we start to think about our tech companies as collecting data and selling that data about us, and that will have everything to do with what they've been engaging in surreptitiously going forward. So that was an advance, a way forward. They had problems monetizing or showing the profit for their new model for quite some time, and they ended up in 2007 buying DoubleClick, and going back to those banner ad days when you would go to a website, if you clicked on the banner and you paid attention to the URL from where it was coming from, that ad was hosted by DoubleClick, and not only hosted by DoubleClick, but DoubleClick also had an exchange where buyers and sellers would go and put in their information, and the ads that were purchased or placed on DoubleClick would be routed to various websites on the internet, and that's how the internet was paid for. So that was Google's competitor in some sense, going back to their innovation and starting it and using data that they were collecting from the users, and they were allowed to purchase DoubleClick. They purchased it and then proceeded to try to route all of the ads and traffic to Google's ad exchange, and to if not Google's hosted ads, to Google's ad exchange. And in the court case, excuse me, in the court case, one thing that I thought interesting was a a remark that ad exchanges are supposed to and this was made by a Google employee, that ad exchanges are supposed to be almost a public good and not to be where they're generating their revenue. And yet Google was generating a massive amount of revenue from their ad exchanges through a couple of different programs that they had.
So that's what's referred to here in the ad tech market, right? It's the
yes,
ad market. Yeah.
yes, and their ad exchange is called AdX. So in the case that was filed in 2021, and and the state of Texas, which Ken Paxton's back in the news, state of Texas figures largely in this. And because I'm not sure why, but they had some of the information that was redacted released, bless their hearts. And so that's where we begin to understand some of what was going on in this antitrust case. So Google had a couple of different projects that were going on that employees discuss, and that they were projects that they were using to drive revenue and traffic to Google's ad sites. One of those projects is called Project Bernanke. And Project Bernanke is interesting because it would provide some advertisers with the information on Google's users. Okay, so one thing that Google was doing was privileging some purchasers of ads with high value impressions. So if a regular
So not all impressions are created equal. There's high value impressions.
No, that's I mean, ideally they would be. You would hope that a company would be providing a service and not manipulating the players, or that people would be getting the same results. But no, for the likes of Facebook or some other large companies, they would, instead of just going to instead of just getting you go to an ad exchange and you buy a certain number of impressions, they were funneling the data about the impressions, or data about the users who were going to see that, so high value impressions would be received by those companies. And not only that, they would also, and I believe this was Project Poirot, they so one thing that websites began to do as Google made this try to conglomeratize or to capture all of the advertising traffic, was to add in their websites code in the headers of the websites that would reach out to some of these third-party or alternate ad exchanges. And so one thing that Google began to do was Poirot, and that's as in Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie's character. They would snoop into the headers of these websites and identify the ones that were using alternative exchanges. And if they were doing so, they would demote their ads that came to Google, or they would. I'm not sure if they would bid against them in the alternative exchanges, but somehow they were demoting the ad traffic for any site that was trying to go around AdX and to use other sites. So, and they had so this was Hercule. This was Project Poirot, Project Bernanke. And they had another project, an in-company project that they talk openly about, that was called Project Jedi. And this was the Jedi mind trick. And Project Jedi was in some part a deal that was cut with Facebook for Facebook not to enter the ad market. So this is where I said Facebook becomes implicated too. So Facebook cuts a deal with Google so that they will not compete with Google for advertising or selling advertisings or participating in an advertising exchange. And this is one of the cases where I believe Google was providing Facebook with preferential treatment for the ad impressions that their advertisers were getting. For some reason, there's also, I believe, one of these programs too was targeted at Apple customers, and not that I think that Apple has been, Apple
They
has been.
haven't been implicated in this. They're not doing the
Yeah,
same thing that Meta was doing.
No, I didn't see that, but I do think that they were also targeting, identifying people with iPhones and Apple products, and in some way targeting the ads of those users too. So anyway, these are some of are some of the programs that Google has been, or policies that Google has been engaged in on the backside of our internet. And
we've got Patrick McGee on X, and he's provided like this long summarization of what's going on here, right?
Yes, and this is a great tweet, and this comes back from 2021, but this is a great tweet to go through to see. He's highlighted some of the case against Google, and pointed out, added some context as to what's going on. So a great thread here to look through if you want to understand what's going on. And to bring it to the present, Google was found guilty of antitrust or Sherman Act violations, and has been and now the court has been looking at Google's operation and considering how to change Google in the future. And what will that mean? What will be best for the internet, best for Google, best for American consumers going forward? And I'm not sure what that will be, but they might break it up like the Ma Bells. They might remove. They might force Google to break off its ad exchange, so AdX becomes its own company.
That's the first thing that was coming to my mind when you were describing all of this. It was making me think of the breakup of AT&T, Ma Bell. Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking you were going to say, I was thinking that they would break up AdX. In my mind, I think that it would make most sense to see an exchange separated from a business that is collecting and selling user data and also providing other services, as like Google does. They also had an antitrust case leading into this about their search platform also, and privileging some of the search results. There's all this talk about the Google algorithm and hacking the Google algorithm, but apparently there was a way to hack it that involved dollars. And
the ultimate hack is suborno. You bribe the guy who's going to put that reminds me of the payola problems. This is how they used to bump the best music that they wanted promoted to the top. They would go pay the DJ. It reminds me of paying the DJ in payola. Absolutely.
This is maybe this is the true definition of commerce. But so all of this has I think this is going to have a huge impact on how we experience the internet. And not only that, I think this also has an impact for crypto, or Web3, as we like to say, because In some ways, Web3 is about changing this monetization aspect, or the user as being the product that exists in our current web, in our current world of the web. So I wanted to, I don't know, I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention to think about what the possibilities are in the future. We talk about the implications of crypto, the implications of Web3, and sometimes lament as to why this hasn't happened before. Well, maybe we begin to understand a little bit as to why, whenever large players are very satisfied with the ad exchange that they have and the way the web is monetized today. Also coming out of this election year with the censorship that was going on, the Kamala versus Biden search results.
Well, this has implications into the censorship, right? Because the DOJ was sitting on this because weren't they trying to coerce Google into doing some of the stuff that the government wanted done in the areas of censorship?
Well, we can only guess there, but look at the timing. Google, this case gets brought up with Google in 2021, and then all cases of such magnitude take quite a while. But you can see Google wanting to play ball with the administration. Who does the Attorney General work for? The Attorney General works for the President of the United States. We talk about this all the time. This is a huge problem. The Department of Justice, if the world made any sense, would be under the judiciary and not prone to alignment with the authority.
So this is your old buddy, your favorite guy, Merrick Garland, right? He
Oh,
just keeps coming up again and again. This guy.
Well, and I don't know if you saw his announcement yesterday. I believe it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, but now the Department of Justice is also bringing an antitrust case against Visa. Did you happen to catch that?
I think there's been things brewing with Visa for a while. I know that there was a big settlement that happened where the payment card processors were working with Visa and MasterCard, and that kind of ran afoul of some stuff. But tell me more about this one specifically.
Well, I mean, it's not going to be a surprise to anyone who uses a debit or a credit card here in the United States. Visa, and again, going back to what the employee says about exchanges, a company should be monetizing somewhere besides an exchange. To be showing outsized profits in the exchange, you would wonder why somebody else doesn't set up an exchange and move in on that. Well, we could say the same thing for payment processing, and maybe not so much people who use their debit cards, but I think anyone who has had a business that does credit card processing understands.
It's such a racket, honestly. It's like these guys, which do very little. Oftentimes, as a merchant, you're paying anywhere from 2 to 4% to process a credit card, and then for the privilege of accepting those cards, usually the credit card company sides with the consumer if there is any problem with fraud or whatever. It takes an inordinate amount of time to deal with any fraud situation. So yeah, it definitely feels very one-sided and extractive. And that 2 to 3% or 4%, somebody may be hearing that and be like, well, I don't know, that doesn't sound like that much. That's a ton, because it comes off the top. Like they take that before any of your expenses or whatever. It's a massive amount.
Yeah, and we talk in crypto about being your own bank, but really some of the things that crypto is best set up to handle or to replace are some of the services that are provided for us by the likes of I don't know, the Visa system. We also need to understand that the Visa is a payment system that is aligned with banks. But again, the Visa can the Visa gets to know what's going on the merchant side and the bank side, and have outsized control there. So they're in quite a position to ensure their ensure their use is perpetuated, and they get to decide the rates. So I don't know. Again, I look at the timing of this, and I look at the government's opening up and beginning to accept the concept of crypto, of possible alternatives, and allowing those alternatives to exist, or not to fight them tooth and nail.
Well, when I think about Visa as a system, there are two parts to it. One, it's this massive extension of credit, right? I mean, when you go get a credit card, they're giving you some amount of a loan product. You start using your credit card, and you immediately have access to funds that you normally wouldn't have access to. And then it's later, end of the month, when you true that up, reconcile it, and have to start thinking about whether you owe interest on the payments that you charged and whatever. So there is this big debt component to it, which I think once crypto figures that part out, like if there's a way to extend credit, then you're going to have something very interesting in crypto, because you're going to start to be able to come charging into this market and challenge it.
Well, this is also where I think crypto gets very interesting, because we talk about the burden or the fault in the system today being so much on the debtor as opposed to the creditor, and I think this is one of the problems that crypto presents, because if we have custody, if lending money is actually lending money, or lending your reserves, then then I think the fault must fall more so on the creditor. So this is not something that I hear discussed, or uh, it's not a discussion that I hear in the world of crypto or traditional finance. Traditional finance doesn't like they don't like people to be reminded that that there are other notions of sharing faults or placing faults in other and I say that, think about whenever you can't pay your credit card, like a lot of people know that they can call a credit card company and they can make a deal. Well, in some part, that's this notion of sharing the fault for the lending of that credit. But to me, it would be make more sense if that was if the fault was shared, and that was the understanding going in, as opposed to this notion that credit card companies can find college students and give them a credit card with $4,000 or $20,000, and let them run it up, and then try to hold them to that debt. I don't know that that's necessarily fair. I say college students, they do it to everybody, and abuse knowledge about their consumers that that would I don't know, to me, in a normal world would mean they would go out of business, or if people understood what was going on. I don't know. I think there must be a better alternative. Hopefully crypto can provide that alternative.
Well, anyway, but back to Google.
Yeah, back to Google, and back to antitrust in general. The Merrick Garland.
So in antitrust, we oftentimes will get into a point where there's remedies, and that's where we're at with Google, right? I mean, this isn't a matter of fighting it out in court. They lost. So now it's just a matter of figuring out, well, what do we have to do to resolve the situation? And does that, we were alluding to it before, that they're going to break the company up. So is that what's next? Is there's a remedy that's on the way, and it's still going to happen under the current administration? And are they going to break Google up into multiple different pieces?
Now that's a funny question. Under the current administration, I do believe that the remedy is supposed. I think the deadline for the remedy or the date for that decision is in February of 2025, which would be convenient.
Oh, that's after. That's after the date.
Isn't that weird? And we thought,
Ah.
and we thought that the judiciary didn't play politics, but
Well, but I thought Google was backing the Democrats, right? I don't think they were
oh
backing the
no,
Trump
and
administration.
corporations are going to back politicians on both sides, and even look into our parties. It's not as if we
Now,
don't
hold on a second. I'm pretty sure big tech backed Harris Walls ticket. I think I've seen these graphs where overwhelmingly that money went to the Democrats.
Well, I think you're actually looking at the wrong side of the equation here in setting out that timeline. There are bureaucrats who work for the Department of Justice who are going to be setting the timeline for these cases and are not going to be interested in something being decided wholly under one administration. That's not a very if they have the decision and the case stretch between two administrations, and especially if those administrations turn out to be Democrat and Republican, the Department of Justice is insulated from this understanding that they actually work for the executive, the the president, and they can appeal to this notion that they work for justice or the Constitution that they love to operate under. So I would guess that thought and it was given to that long before we knew the players that were going into the to this recent election, and that they were looking and thinking about a new administration coming in, and also that it would be ideal as the new administration comes in to reset the rules and go from there with maybe 3 more years.
Well, who's going to be our attorney general under Trump? I didn't see who got floated for that. Have we heard yet? I heard that there's been some movements, and I just about threw up when I heard some of the appointees, but I haven't heard anyone on this one.
I haven't heard on the attorney general. I saw that was Kash Patel is going to be intelligence czar or something of the like. I thought that he might have been attorney general.
Why are we still using that word czar? Like, what is this? Like pre the change in the administration in Russia? Is that what we're like harkening back to? Czars.
Well, once you have cabinet officials and you create all these positions, you got to use something. And we have a long fascination with defining ourselves against Russia. So it's czar or tsar. I'm not sure who the attorney general is going to be, but when it comes to matters of antitrust, I think that a lot of attorney generals are going to be aligned. We're also seeing Trump already begin to attack the Federal Reserve. I'm of the opinion that part of this fascination with antitrust comes into the federal government on the heels of us abandoning the tiered system of states having their own corporations, their own dominion over certain sectors and fighting amongst each other. The moment that we got rid of that system, we begin to have problems with trusts, with monopolies. You give a monopoly to a private bank in lieu of a central bank to answer some of the problems of a country, then that monopoly, especially if it's at the heart of all transactions, if it's your central bank, it begins to create other monopolies underneath it. And look at how this monopoly has played out with Google and does over and over and over. It does so in the financialized aspect of Google. Did Google corner this market by providing better search results? No, it did so by taking over the ad exchange and making money on the financial transactions that were occurring in the selling of the ads. So and I think that we see that whether it's in telecom, in Verizon and Southwestern Bell, whether it's in the price fixing or the collusion in setting the prices for products between agricultural companies. Go to any of the trusts that we fought in all 150 years, and you'll see that they go back to the financialization aspects of these corporations. So maybe Trump's understanding of how to walk us out of the monopoly with the Federal Reserve, the monopoly granted to the Federal Reserve. And I think it's very important for us to begin to understand that the Federal Reserve is a private institution. Donald Trump does not get to ask or force the chair of the FOMC, the board that operates the Federal Reserve, doesn't get to ask him to resign, because that's a private institution. It's not a government institution, and yet it operates as our central bank. And the idea when that occurred was, well, the United States isn't allowed to have a central bank, or the federal government isn't allowed to have a central bank, and we're going to get around that. But that has created huge problems for especially this notion of free markets or open markets that exist in the United States, because if there's one great denominator, one money that underpins them all, then those who line up and play games with that money have been the winners over and over and over. So,
well, I'll tell you what, I've never seen somebody so flagrantly poke Trump in the eye as what just happened with the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell. Like, that's the kind of thing where if you just lay low, you could probably maybe skate with what's going on. But if you poke him directly in the eye, now we're going to get to see some fireworks, because I don't think Trump's going to take very kindly to being told that he can't have influence over some of the stuff that he wants to have influence over, regardless of whether he's going to be right. I think this is where the game can be changed, and I think a lot of what's going to happen with this administration is the changing of the game. So I think whoever Trump picks for attorney general, it's going to be a pretty impactful appointment.
I mean, totally agree. But whenever I saw that exchange take place with regards to Trump and Powell, I thought I hope that Trump turns to the Treasury and begins to talk about the control he that he has over the Secretary of the Treasury, and the actual control that the United States government has over the Federal Reserve, is that they sell the bonds that are created by the federal government to the Federal Reserve. And the actual control that they have or that the president has is over the Treasury. And I think that was the way that the federal government was set up on purpose, not to have a central bank, and rather than the legislative and the executive branches to get together and to create a central bank or to exert control over the Federal Reserve and actually bring it under the authority of the president, I think is a bad thing. And the FOMC board used to, when it was created in New York City. Do you know where the FOMC convenes today?
Where are they convening today?
Washington, D.C. And it was part of the appearance or the understanding that that was a private bank that was working with the United States government to sell the Treasury bonds and to engage in commerce, and that the private sector was the private sector, and free trade was free trade in the United States. But I believe it was in the wake of the Nixon shock, that the FOMC got picked up and moved to Washington, D.C., because these Washington politicians needed to keep a closer eye on what was going on in that private institution. And I don't think that they were able to stop the monopolies, stop the collusion, stop the insider trading. I think they became part of it. And if we have a central bank, I think that will increase. I think that will only increase. So hopefully Trump turns to the Treasury and thinks about limiting the reliance on the Federal Reserve there. But I'm afraid that he won't.
So I guess to think this through, we've got remedy that's going to start happening in February. So the Trump administration is going to roll in. Whoever is picked for attorney general is going to they're going to be presiding over this remedy situation. This is pretty interesting. This is very impactful. I mean, Google's one of those biggest companies out there. So now you're going to have this Trump appointee, that whoever he puts in charge of the attorney general's office is going to be presiding over the breakup of Google.
And I think we'll see this in the separation of the ad exchange and the provider of web products, especially the search product. But I also think that this is going to play out in a narrative about the censorship apparatus, because we know that the Trump administration got the short end of that stick in the last administration, and they're upset about it. And I would say that there's many Americans who do not believe or do not understand the extent or how that occurred. And I would imagine that they might use this breakup also to highlight the censorship that I mean, this is supposition on my part, but when I think about the companies that were fighting against the requests of the CISA, the CISA, whatever the apparatus that the Biden administration created to disseminate, what they deemed mis or malinformation. Those companies that seem to have been assenting to their suggestions are these companies that are implicated in the antitrust case. I find that very interesting. So I would guess that because we have a new administration coming in, they're going to point that out, and that's going to be part of the discussion about why some of these companies actually did not uphold our values of free speech for citizens of the United States and for their consumers.
With Elon Musk being so close to Trump, I think that's going to be, he's going to have the ear of Trump to talk this through as well, because he's right there with Twitter files, being able to see exactly how all this was going down. So then they can start crate digging inside what was happening in those departments.
Well, and you also think about Elon Musk and what he's tried to do with X and some of the problems that he's had. The moment that he bought X, a lot of the advertisers fled. I think one that the breakup of the monopoly that Google has had with regards to advertising on Web 2.0 is going to be incredibly good for what has seemed to us to be second tier sites. And Musk has doggedly improved the search results, the information, Grok, and some of the other aspects of the website formerly known as Twitter. Now, if he has an even playing field with access to people who are publishing advertising, I think it'll be very, very good for X. I'm also thinking of Rumble. Rumble is not engaged in censorship, and some of these other sites that have not done so. Well, I can imagine that they were also getting the shrift, say, when it came to the profit, the ads that were being sent their way.
Well, if it starts to be that you have an understanding in the general populace that the ads you're purchasing aren't as good as the ads that big companies can get, and then you can go to a platform with lots of users and has a much more fair ad market, you'd think that would start to get priced in, and especially if this does get busted up in a way that allows for a more free market competition type of environment. Yeah, you'd think that this would be ripe for disruption at this point.
And we've also seen a collapse of our traditional media, and I would say that to me, in many ways, this is all tied together, because we've seen many, almost all newspapers and magazines. Think about
those have completely collapsed. I mean, it's impossible to even contemplate publishing a magazine anymore, because who's going to advertise in it? Who's going to look at it? Who's going to subscribe to it?
Well, think about like their reliance on paywalls now, and part of their problem with paywalls is, I mean, regular print newspapers didn't survive on that model to begin with. They were always about selling advertisements. And I don't
wasn't it classifieds? Because I thought it was Craigslist that sort of was the first death knell of newspapers, because it used to be that the classified ads was the Facebook marketplace of the old days.
Well, that was one part of it. I would say that there were three legs of monetization for like a traditional paper of record. One was legals, two is classifieds, three was regular ads, and we stripped them. Well, legals still have to exist in hard print form. That's what holds up papers of record. Like in their, they have no journalists. They don't pay any journalists. They only have stringers or what have you anymore. But yeah, they lost their classifieds to Craigslist and then to Facebook Marketplace. And Facebook Marketplace seems to have held on to that. Google took the traditional advertisers, and some of these people thought, oh, we're going to shift to the paywall. I don't think the paywall has worked. The paywall does work. The paywall does work for individuals. And look how we've seen. I mean, look at what happened to Tucker Carlson when Tucker Carlson moves out of a network, and maybe that's a bad example, because I don't know that he has a Patreon or a subscription service, say here on X, but I see the likes of Mike Benz and Rachel and other journalists who are not held by an organization and monetize themselves with a paywall. I just don't think it actually works for, it doesn't work for The Economist or the Atlantic Monthly or the New Yorker. Maybe it does. Maybe it does for Atlantic Monthly and New Yorker, but not your. No, I don't think it even works for them. They've tried it, but even their content has devolved into drivel. But I don't know. Now we're way off subject here, but I think that long story short, and to sum it up, this hidden aspect of the internet has had huge impacts in the experience that we have in finding information online and also our discourse online. And in February of next year, by February of next year, I expect there to be massive changes that come. So something to look forward to and keep an eye out for.
Fascinating topic. Can't wait to see what happens. I'll definitely be keeping a closer eye on this, and we'll catch you tomorrow.